Hello, everybody. Welcome to the West Ham Way YouTube channel. You already know who I am. You probably know who these guys are. They've been on before. It's the return of Writer's Block. Every Saturday, we talk about the key talking points at West Ham. And as always, there is plenty to talk about. So, first of all, lads, how are we doing? Have you recovered from yesterday's drama?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks.
Yeah,
it was a bit
all covered from yesterday's.
Got over the line.
Yeah, shattered.
Yeah, no, I feel it. It was
drama's one word for it.
Yeah, no, was it Said Benrahma? I think it was the pun coming out on Twitter, but it was just nuts, wasn't it? It was back and forth, and I suppose that leads very nicely into the first question, which is, will Said Benrahma be a success at West Ham? I mean, it's quite an open question. I mean, I'm just happy we've managed to sign someone with genuine quality. But I'm coming at Dennis first. I know before last week you were a little bit sketchy about whether we should sign him or not. Have you changed your mind now?
You should have his Twitter profile was just anti-Said Benrahma.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is that my position still hasn't changed with my concerns on him as a player. I mean, I feel a bit vindicated that the Brentford lad you had on last night sort of backed up some of the things I said about his attitude and the fact that he may not be able to handle the physicality and mentality of the Premier League. I mean, like, for example, there was lots of talk of him going to Arsenal. If he was that good, why didn't they sign him? Sorry to put it down on it. But would I rather have nobody than Said Benrahma? Absolutely bloody not. Of course, I'd much rather sign Said Benrahma. He is clearly a quality footballer. It's just whether I think he's got the mentality and is ready for the step up. I hope I'm wrong. I hope, like, for example, of course I want Craig Dawson to be a success at West Ham. The difference between Said Benrahma and Craig Dawson is I know Craig Dawson won't. but you always back a new signing. I mean, the question was would you rather King or Benrahma? My preference would have been King. I'd rather Benrahma than a lot of the players we were linked with in this window. He clearly does have quality. But like you said, we clearly do need to talk about, and I'm just going to say it, the shithousery that was yesterday, because we woke up with everything all sorted, lunchtime announcement pending, and then suddenly there's an issue with his medical that is leaked to the press with a Sullivan journalist leaking it, and then suddenly we're trying to renegotiate the transfer. All smells a bit fishy to me, and there still is a bad taste in my mouth because we've sold Grady and then signed Benrahma, what will be double the money by the end of it. Why? Like, as much like Benrahma, you had a quality young left winger in himself. You sold and replaced him with someone else. I mean, it's a bit of obviously when we lose Grady, Benrahma's a good replacement on paper, but wouldn't it not been better sense to just not sell Grady because we were told it was for defensive reinforcements? We've signed Kufal in an instalment thing where we pay 1.5 million up front and the rest of it in instalments. And we signed Craig Dawson on loan. So you're telling me we didn't have 1.5 million and whatever loan fee we've got for Craig Dawson? I refuse to believe that. So the sale of Grady D and Garner still is just perplexed me. But we're got a bit sidetracked about the transfer window there. But to back up my original points, in that I still have my concerns. I still think my concerns are vindicated. However, I hope I'm wrong. And of course, I'd rather have him as an option on the wing than nobody, because at the minute we're very weak on the left wing. Fornells, who isn't really a winger, who else could play there? Maybe if you switch Bowen or Yarmolenko to the left flank, or move Masuaku up and play Cresswell left back. We were very weak on the left wing. We didn't have 8 wingers like David Sullivan with his magic calculator came up with on TalkSport the other day. This is the same guy that said there was like 200 angry Twitter users at the GSB outmarch. I went to both of them. There were thousands of fans. So clearly the man can't count. But yeah, that's it. I mean, like I said, yes, you're right, Charles. I wouldn't say anti-side, but just like, I see it as a risk. I don't really see, why we're spending this money out on him. If Moyes doesn't want him, like people are saying, is he going to play him? We've seen with Haller, he doesn't have a problem benching a big money player, no matter how good they are. In order to fit the system, he's not going to sacrifice his system. I just hope we find a way for Benrahma to come into the system and just rip it up. But I'm not keeping my feet on the ground here. I'm not getting ahead of myself. That's my 2 pence on it.
No, I think we all are, mate. And you know, when I did my sort of live show yesterday, when it was touch and go as to whether it had happened, I think we've all got dragged into, because of the way that it's been dealt with the whole transfer, that we'd rather have someone of his quality in than not at all. And we've obviously got to that stage over a period of months. And you know, I've had criticisms of him in terms of his work rate there. Can he transition to the Premier League? There are a lot of question marks. There's no doubt in his technical quality. There's just some of his physical attributes that you look at and think, can he make that step up? But yeah, like you said with that transfer market, you know, leaving it to the last minute, even if they thought it was a done deal, you know, had we identified him months back, you know, created the transfer fee, said that this is what we're going to pay. But I have to agree, there is something massively suspect about leaving it to the last minute and then changing it to almost a loan to buy obligation. There's something that's really off for me on that one.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. If it's going to come out of next summer's transfer budget, I guess you can, from the board's point of view, is the only way we could have got him. But why put that bid in the first place? Why say we've got 30 million to spend on Tarkowski on TalkSport? Could it be, again, going on a complete tangent, there's lots of talk of a sale. Could it be that we are going to get bought by, you know, our new American overlords, and they're going to pick up the transfer fee next summer? Maybe.
Yeah,
again,
I think probably it's so that fee. The issue I've got with it as well is it's tied in now. Like they can use that as kind of we've got this 30 million that we are going to spend. Therefore, if we're in January and we need someone to bring in on the squad that's poor, we can't do that because, you know, we've got that money tied in. That is my biggest concern with it, the way it's been structured. It does have to beg the question how the transfer budget itself has gone from 40, you know, to 30, and now to basically nothing. I mean, I'll come to Mark. I mean, we can talk about Said Benrahma and obviously whether it'll be a success or not, but there is that overwhelming sense that this transfer window has been disappointing.
Absolutely. You just said there, you last little bit about where it's gone from 40 million, 30. I don't think we've ever had that. I think the whole budget, they obviously took, they took the Souček, paid for him out of this summer's budget for the loan they had for him. So I don't think they had a budget, and I think the only money that they had was for Grady. The fact that, you know, as Dennis just said about the whole TalkSport interview, talking about, we didn't mention, but that's what we meant, Tarkowski. There was never any money there, and I think that Sullivan, he wants to be liked, and I think that he knows that the fan base dislike him, or the majority of the fan base, I should say, dislike him, and I think that ultimately he's trying to become popular. If you go back a couple of years, obviously we had the fan, he ran onto the pitch and put the corner flag on the pitch. We got rid of Moyes and then brought in Pellegrini, and then he went onto a big spending spree. And I think, well, he hasn't gone onto a similar thing on this occasion. I think that's what he's trying to do here, to try and get the fans back on side, take a bit of the heat off of him, which, you know, I understand it, but he's gone about it the wrong way, because yet again, he's mouthed off on TalkSport about, oh, we've got this amount of money to spend, we've got this budget. I don't think he did. And then obviously the fiasco of yesterday, where, you know, we were all set to sign him. You know, we've leaked out that he's done his first part of his medical. Everything was all okay, and then, you know, suddenly there's this problem, and I don't think there was a problem with his medical. I think there's something more to it, i.e., we haven't got the budget of what we were meant to be paying. Was it 25 million plus 5 million in add-ons? Is that the deal?
It was something along those lines. Now it's a 4 million loan fee, 21 million and 5 million in performance-based add-ons. Like, if he scores 4 goals with his left foot in the month of February, we give them an extra million. Like, you know, it's like the COVID rules. Like,
yeah, that's what I think. I don't feel that we ever had the money, because, you know, as far back as, well, before we started coming back after Project Restart, Sullivan, when all the supporters were given the option of renewing their season tickets, I think there was something that came out as an unofficial quote with him that said he was surprised at how many supporters had actually decided they wanted the cash back rather than keeping it as club cash or just renewing their season ticket. You know, apparently he's put 30 million, or him or Gold, whichever one of them is, he's put £30 million just to keep the club going. There's more to it. I don't think we're ever going to get to the bottom of it. which I guess is understandable. 100% employed by the club, but I don't feel that there was ever a budget whatsoever. Regarding Benrahma, a little bit like Dennis, I must admit, I was a little bit unsure because I think of his lack of Premier League experience. You think we got rid of Grady because he didn't have Premier League experience, or we've signed someone who hasn't. I don't really understand that. And obviously, his work rate as a player, does he fit into Moyes' style of play? Obviously, one of the criticisms of Haller is that he doesn't work hard enough, and that's why he's not playing. So is Benrahma going to, obviously, he might end up being like an Anderson type player with work rate, and we know how quickly some of our fans can get on players' backs if, players aren't running around the pitch, which obviously that's not the be all and end all, as we all know. However, I've done a little bit of digging around him, some of his stats over the last couple, certainly last season in particular. He, over a course of 90 minutes, 6.7 dribbles per 90 minutes. He was only second to Grady in the Championship last year, which, every supporter loves a player that's going to run at someone. And I think we do lack a player like that in our team. I think we've got a dribbler. I think that's quite exciting to have. One of my massive bugbears was we don't shoot enough. I think other than Yarmolenko, how many shots do you see in our games outside the box? Not many. He apparently last year 2.3 shots per 90 minutes was outside of the box. I think that's something I'm excited about. The amount of times that we just lump it into the box from a set piece, I think that adds another dimension to our game. And also as well with key passes and through balls. Again, instead of relying a lot on set pieces under Moyes, especially since Project Restart. Through balls, key passes, 2.27 key passes a game, and he's one of the top players in the Championship last year. So I think that there's definitely some encouraging signs there from my point of view, and I think that we need someone like that in our team because you could argue we've got it in Lanzini, but we all know Lanzini's fallen off the face of the earth the last 18 months, 2 seasons, and I think he's quite an exciting signing. I also saw your video, Corey, with with Billy, the Brentford fan, where you kept referring back to Payet. And I think that for me is part of it as well. I think it's quite exciting actually to have a player that has got similar attributes and characteristics as a player. So I feel that he will be a success at West Ham as long as we're not prepared. Fans I think will get on his back if his work rate's not up to scratch. But if he's doing it at the other end of the pitch, that for me doesn't really matter too much. We carried Payet at times in terms of his work rate, like defensively. He didn't do the dirty work because he was so good going forward. I'm not saying Benrahma's going to reach that level, but if he's near to it, I don't care about him defensively. Let him go and attack and try and cause some havoc up the other end of the pitch and create chances for Bowen, Antonio, Souček, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think a lot of it does depend on the system, basically. And obviously with this 3-4-3, if you push Mazuaki a little bit further up on that left-hand side, it does give Benrahma a little bit of that sort of defensive security behind him. And I think they can link up quite nicely down that side as well. There is that element to it where I look at it having sort of initially gone, I don't know if he's got that work rate or that physicality. Because, and in fairness to Fornals, his work rate is incredibly high, and that's why we rate him so highly, even when he's not necessarily chalking up goals or assists. So he's going to have to come in. I do think he offers us a little bit something different. He's almost like, although he comes off that left-hand side, he's a bit like a playmaker. And, he's one of those West Ham signs you look at and he's going to get you excited. Every time he plays, you're going to be like, what's he going to do next? And I was saying on the stream yesterday, it's so unfortunate we're not in the ground because Benrahma's that guy when, the stadium's packed out and you're watching him play that everyone's just excited to see what he does next. But, yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier. We were talking about the window in general and how it's come about. It's just, there's something really off about the whole thing. If I'm honest, I think someone put a stat out on Twitter saying this is the second worst window in terms of spending, other than when we were in the Championship. That sounds about right, if I'm honest. And obviously leveling out, selling Grady, and then bringing in very few players as well. I've always said this, and I don't know how you feel about it, but we've saved a lot in terms of wages. And there are loan deals out there. There are free agents out there. I'm surprised as well we haven't gone for any of them to try and bolster the squad. Even with Benrahma in, I think we've only got 21 players. So you need another 4 that maybe need to be promoted from that academy.
3 of those players are goalkeepers, I might add quickly as well.
Yeah, that's the other point as well. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is really. The only reason I can think of that we haven't gone for more free transfers or loan signings is because Moyes doesn't rate them. Obviously we've seen quite a few players. Obviously there was Maddison, James Maddison a couple of years ago apparently didn't rate him. Manning from QPR didn't rate him. Henry as well. I know that they're signing. So that's the only thing I can think of, that he doesn't rate these players that are available on the free transfer market. I find it bizarre. He must realise that we've got a small squad, and in my opinion, we're 1, maybe 2 injuries away from being down to Harry Redknapp's famous bare bones. Especially in certain positions. You look at centre forwards. If Antonio gets injured, we're in massive trouble, because that's going to alter the whole way that we play. And obviously, as we saw against Everton in the cup game, when Noble and Snodgrass came into the middle of the midfield. If Rice and Souček aren't playing in the middle of the midfield, we're exposed. If one of them were to get an injury, I would dread to think what would happen if might get away with it if one of Rice or Souček's still there. But if Noble or Snodgrass are playing, I fear, and I do feel that we should have looked to have signed another central midfield player to be looking to actually to be in the starting 11 rather than someone just as a squad player. And I think we've said previously, Sullivan was obviously throwing Moyes under the bus a few weeks ago. He was TalkSport interview where saying that Moyes didn't want to sign squad players. He wanted first teamers. So there's probably an element to that a bit as well. Sullivan basically saying, I've got no money, so you can't have anybody, but I can get you player X because he's only going to cost me £1 million or something. And that's the best that you're going to get. And I think that probably summed up quite well with the having signed Craig Dawson as well on loan at the end.
Yeah, that one's kind of gone under the radar now. We've signed Benrahma. But Charles, I'll come to you, mate, because I think we're all on the sort of similar wavelength last week when we were talking about Benrahma, and it was like, he's a fantastic player. Can he make that transition? Has anything in the past week maybe in your head said, do you know what, I changed my thoughts, or are you still very much thinking it's going to be tough for him coming into this West Ham side?
Well, look, I was Benrahma's big supporter on the show a couple of weeks ago. I was the one who was getting shot down, but in terms of the points that were made, it's fair enough. The system that we have currently, you've got to be thinking, why are we getting Benrahma? And as Dennis has mentioned, especially when you've sold D and Garner for 18 million. I was excited to sign someone like Benrahma. He's an insanely talented player with English football experience already under his belt, in one of the toughest, most competitive leagues in the world, potentially. Obviously I was very excited about him coming in and obviously the technical ability he's bringing in. I think it was Dennis and Jamie saying about, whether we actually need him. And to be fair, it's a valid point. I think I'd much have rather spent that 30 million that we're going to end up spending on Benrahma on, defensive reinforcements, someone better than Craig Dawson, another left back, and potentially another centre midfielder, and maybe a loan or free transfer striker. That's probably the smart way to look at it. But of course, you've got David Sullivan, David Gold running the show, so that was never going to be the case. Benrahma, I think, is another Salthouse client, so I mean that explains it all, really.
Prefer not to speak.
But yeah, I'm happy. I'm really happy that we've got the deal across in the end, because I think he's going to be an exciting player to watch. And I mean, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, he's going to be the next Pyatt" and everything like that. You know, I'm obviously going to be calling off on any of those comparisons for a while. Pyatt was a once in a generation sort of talent for us. So if he gets even half as good as Pyatt was, then, you know, I think we've got a very good player on our hands. I think a lot of the concerns with people are his sort of defensive qualities, and I understand that, but also what's so good about the system that we're playing currently is that Masuaku is we've got 3 centre backs who are constantly at the back, but we've also now got Masuaku and either Fredericks or Soufal on the wing backs, who are able to come back and help out, and that's predominantly why our system has been so good and why we've conceded so few goals, is because of their helping out and their support at the back. That's not only allowed our defence to thrive, but it's also allowed our attack to pounce and counter properly. So I think he'd work well in that system. I mean, I know Fornals has been playing out of his shoes recently. But, you know, I mean, when you have a player of Benrahma's talent, I mean, you've got to be playing him. And I think, you know, in terms of Fornals' general play, there's times, obviously, when he's, you know, playing really well, but there are times where he's maybe lacking that creative and quality edge in the final third, and certainly has missed a few sitters over the course of his time. I'm not saying that he's a bad player at all. I think he's, you know, done really well for us. But, you know, if you think that, you know, Benrahma's going to be in that role, you'd like to think that he's going to be someone who's going to be putting away those goals or creating those chances on a consistent basis. So, yeah, I'm very happy with signing Said. I think another encouraging sign was just showing how relieved he was at getting the deal done. It seemed like he was one of the many thousands of West Ham fans who were biting their nails right up until the extended 7 p.m. deadline, and yeah, but it was nice to see that he seems relieved and he seems happy to be here. So, you know, I think it was all pointing in a very positive direction. So, time will tell. Obviously, we won't see him in the squad for Sunday. But yeah, I'm very happy with the signing, and hopefully he'll do quite a lot of bits for us. I think we can definitely see him being on par with, or even better than, you know, the sort of the Bowen sign. And I think we know how happy that everyone is with him. So we'll just have to wait and see, like I say. But yeah, very good signing. Tops off a rather tumultuous window.
Tell me about it. I was just thinking, like, that's such a good point, and I said it on the stream yesterday as well. The fact that he was desperate to come to West Ham, and obviously he's not a West Ham fan, he didn't come through the academy, but just that attitude to want to play in the Premier League, to want to come and show himself, is really positive. And we know that Moyes, particularly, you know, when these players come up from the Championship, like Jarrod Bowen, he sort of says, all right, you can wait a few games. And I remember with Bowen, when he came in for maybe 5-10 minutes and looked lively, and we were all sitting there going, why is he not started? Gets one start, gets a goal, and all of a sudden it's just sort of second nature. So you hope the same happens with Benrahma, and the goal contributions from both of them in the Championship are unbelievable. They are two of the most creative players down there, as well as prolific. So I'm I'm excited. You know, I can't lie. I'm excited to see him play and see what he turns up with. So fingers crossed.
The signings we've had in you know, sort of recent years anyway, at least for me, since the Pyatt signing, I think it's one of those signings where we can be like, you know, this is quite exciting. This can really be an interesting one. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame he's not in for the Spurs game. I would have loved to have seen him. I reckon Doherty's going to bomb on in that game, and he'd have so much space on that left. But, you know, Fornals has done a great job, and I think that's why people are a bit split on it, in fact, because they kind of look at it and say, how could you even drop Fornals from the side in the current form? But listen, they've tied up a lot of money in that Benrahma deal. I do expect him to definitely start regularly for West Ham.
And in other West Ham news, you can take the man out of West Ham, but you can't take West Ham out of the man. Carlton Cole has cost West Ham fans money on Soccer AM by missing a penalty, and it was quite a bad miss, apparently. Just got a text message telling me that, and I'm like, oh, I love Carlton, but yeah, that's typical West Ham. Cost them like I think 500 quid or something.
Is he still available?
Well, I can't go that up anyway, so I can't spend it.
Right, classic. So next question. Bit of an international theme with this one, and something that gets under my skin so much that I have to do a video about it because I wanted to see what you look for. Is the criticism of Declan Rice at England level unfair? Now, first and foremost, I don't believe we've seen the best of Declan Rice in an England shirt. I do believe that much is true. But I've said you have to look at the system. You have to look at, I mean, Southgate's playing a ridiculously defensive system. You know, I don't think he works alongside Hendo too well. There are certain elements of it that I look at, but I did think against Belgium in that second half, I thought he was really positive. I thought he was really good. He showed a little bit of what he does for West Ham week in, week out. So I'll come to Charles on this one. First and foremost, do you watch England too much? Because I know some people are a bit like they can't be bothered. But if so, do you think Declan Rice's criticism that he gets is unfair?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, before the World Cup in 2018, I was very sporadically watching them, especially in the friendlies. I couldn't care less in the friendlies. But obviously there was that renaissance in the 2018 World Cup, and everyone was behind the country, and yeah, so I have been watching it a lot more, and especially now Rice is in the team, it's nice to have someone that you can follow. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it seems like Southgate's losing the plot a bit recently, and some of his tactical decisions have been a bit bizarre. And like you say, for a team that's has so much talent in its attacking third, you have to wonder why defensively we're setting it up like that. We're so defensive, and when you look at the players that we have at the back, it's probably our weakest part. You know, our attack is potentially one of the best in the world, and so you need to focus on that. And so I'd say that's one of the things going against Declan, is that, you know, he's been used in a system where, you know, I mean, to be fair, he's been using a system where he gets to show off his defensive skills and everything like that. But, you know, he's not allowed to bomb forward like he does with West Ham. He's not allowed to kind of make those kind of cutting passes that he makes as well. So I don't know what's going on with Southgate. I hope he gets it sorted for the Euros, but I mean, it's tough to tell really. But in terms of the stick that Declan Rice gets, it's completely unwarranted. When you go on Twitter and you see the people that are tweeting, "Oh, I don't get the hype around Declan Rice," or "Oh, he's completely underrated." It's three demographics of fans. They're either Tottenham fans, they're either Leeds fans, or they're either Newcastle fans, because they're all completely jealous of Declan Rice. Declan Rice has done over Newcastle's midfielders constantly, time and time again. Tottenham fans, well, they just hate us, so that's fair enough. And then Leeds fans think Calvin Phillips is the second coming of Jesus Christ himself. I honestly don't know what. I mean, if you want to talk about someone who kind of is really not really impressing anyone at the moment, Calvin Phillips. I mean, I just don't. I haven't seen anything that's really done anything. Again, I haven't watched Leeds, so maybe there's something that I'm missing there. But from what I've seen in the England team, it's sort of like, yeah, he's all right. But the thing with Declan is that the Twitter mob, when they look at him, they're seeing him as a box-to-box. They're basically seeing him as an attacking midfielder. They're basically seeing him as this guy's got to get us, 2 assists a game and maybe a 30-yard screamer as well. He's just not that kind of player. He's not the kind of player that's going to, excite you. He's going to be the player that does the dirty work. And that's why people are so like, oh, he's so overrated. It's because he does a different role to what they're expecting. So I feel like he's already sort of under the cosh there with fans because he's not exciting enough. I mean, Grealish is a great player and he's more exciting. That's why he's great in that role, and that's why fans want to see Grealish in the team, and I don't blame them. I want to see Grealish in the team too, but you've got to have someone who's going to be so solid in the midfield. And there is no one better in the country right now than Declan Rice in the centre of midfield, who can keep it, who can keep the defence together, hold it in midfield, and when it needs to be done, make those passes and get forward. So I think you're completely right, Corey. It's completely unwarranted, the sort of criticisms he gets, but it's not really surprising in the age of what have you done for me lately? If he misplaces one pass, then he's basically the worst player in the world. So
yeah, it's annoying, and you've touched on it, like you've hit it sort of bang on the head there, where people expect him to be this world beater, and if he misplaces that one pass or he doesn't receive it at the right time or take the right touch, all of a sudden, oh, he's massively overrated, this, that, and the other. And listen, we watch him week in, he's unbelievable, right? He's so consistent as well, and he's an intelligent defensive midfielder. Now, I did watch Calvin Phillips against Man City. What's that?
And he's 21 years old, so take it easy on him.
Exactly, and like obviously Calvin is 25, so he's a bit older. I watched him against Man City. I thought he was very, very good in that second half. He is a good defensive midfielder, but whereas Declan is, and there's maybe an argument that Calvin's got better visions, but I mean Declan as a complete player, as an intelligent player, I think he's just a bit of a level above. They're both good players, but you're right. You've got the system where you've got two defensive midfielders in there, and all of a sudden England fans expect us to be creating constantly. But then Southgate's put Mason Mount on the right-hand side, or, he's left Jack Grealish out instead of playing on the left. And it has to be down to the selection for me. Southgate is way too defensive. And I think even in that first game against Belgium when we played Trent on the right-hand side, and Trent's not a wing-back, and he just wasn't pushing high up enough. And we just weren't progressing with the ball. He was too deep. Bring on Reece James, completely changes. He pushes constantly. So, unfortunately, I just think, one, it's the system, and two, it is, unfortunately, social media and the way fans are in terms of looking at Declan and overrating him. I'll come to Mark on this one. I mean, do you have to, I'm sure you agree that it's unfair, but I mean, I'll ask you this. Do you think we have yet to see the best of Declan Rice in an England shirt?
No, I don't think we have. I agree with what's just been said there by Charles. I think the criticism is massively unfair. I don't think the system suits him. I don't really understand why we're, certainly in the last game, why we were playing effectively two holding midfield players with Phillips and Rice. They don't need that, but that's obviously a conversation we've on for another day. Rice for me starts in that England midfield. I think as time's gone on since he broke into the West Ham team, I think he's expanded his game. All the time you can see that now in his range of passing. I think he's getting better. He's certainly getting more confident, and I think he has started adding a little bit more, not too much, but a little bit more box-to-box work. I think the criticism he gets, I think, comes predominantly from what I've seen in Newcastle. And Leeds fans, obviously Newcastle with the Longstaff brothers after he scored that goal against Man United, and suddenly he should be picked. And Phillips, I agree with what you said. Phillips is probably, his passing is probably better than Rice. I think he's got a better range of pass. But I would level that out and say, well, Rice is actually more mobile than Phillips. And I think for me, if you're playing that holding midfield role, you've got to be able to sniff out danger. And Phillips is a little bit slow. Certainly what I saw in that England game, I do agree with you, he played very well in the Man City game for Leeds. But Rice, he's constantly on his toes. He's there, he's waiting, he's ready to pounce, or to cause an error. And he needs, for me, to be starting for England, every game, or certainly in all of the big games. He's had 10 caps for England, I think. So he's not. He's got a long way to go, but if he doesn't play 100 times for England, I would be very, very surprised. He's head and shoulders above any other English central midfield holding midfield player at the moment, and he's, for me, the top 3 holding midfield players in the Premier League at the moment for me. And I think the criticism is ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, it does translate a bit from England level, obviously, when he plays for West Ham, and it has gone a little bit more quiet on that front from other fans now when they see him against Leicester and Wolves, and they're like, hang on, there's a bit of a player here. And I say to any opposition fan, I say you have to watch him week in, week out, because if you don't, it's easy to think because of. I'm not saying we put hype on him, but we do rate him very, very highly, to say that, oh, well, he's not doing what all these West Ham fans. So we never said that he's going to start, beating one man, two man. He's not going to get you off your seat, but he's so consistent. And his improvement over around 3 to 4 seasons, he's played so many games for us. And he's 21, as Charles said. I can just see him just elevating that level. And I think when he shows a bit like he did against Belgium in that second half, and he does it regularly for England, all of a sudden, those kind of criticisms of him are going to start to calm down a little bit.
I also think as well, it's a lack of understanding of what his role actually is. Everyone wants, like a number 10 or a number 8. That's what they expect now. All of their midfield players to be, or worst case scenario, they expect him to be like that Henderson type midfield player, where when he plays that box-to-box role with Liverpool. That's what people expect. I don't understand that. In actual fact, you can have someone who can just sit in front of the back 3, back 4, and just get the ball and just keep things moving. And I think that's a lack of awareness and understanding of the role. And I think that until people actually fully understand what Declan Rice does, I think he will always get that criticism, even if he does start showing a little bit more of his West Ham form. And say he's had about 10 caps. He's not, spread over the best part of 2 seasons. There's not exactly enough time really to show what he can do. If you look at someone like Harry Maguire, the 2018 World Cup, where he played well over sort of 4-5 games, and suddenly he was the great centre half that England have ever had, just because people had seen him on a regular basis rather than once every couple of months or whatever it is. So yeah, as I say, the criticism is totally unfair. And for me, he's the best English holding midfield player, and he deserves to start. And I think the criticism is totally unjustified.
Yeah, agree. I mean, Dennis, anything to add on that? How do you feel about the Declan Rice hate?
Plenty to add. Plenty to add. So,
Corey. No, I was just saying, his hate seems to have sort of gone up a little bit since that move to Chelsea didn't happen. Now all of a sudden they're back again. It seemed like the Chelsea sphere kind of just let him off a bit, and now it's kind of getting a little bit toxic again.
I mean, I only saw the Belgium game. I didn't watch the Denmark game. I was actually rock climb on Wednesdays, so I didn't watch it. But he made, what I've read from statistics is that even in that Denmark game that was abysmal, he made less mistakes than other players, yet his are highlighted. I was laughing about the Twitter stuff I was saying. I remember there was one tweet that just was everywhere. It was like, it was Declan Rice misplaced a pass, and it was like that thing where they do 1 capital, 1 lowercase, 1 capital, 1 lowercase, like future England captain. And it's just like, yeah, are you telling me a footballer has never misplaced a pass? I mean, it's not like he slipped. He was a Liverpool fan, and I'm like, it's not like he slipped over and cost his team the championship against Chelsea, is it? But we can't mention that. We can't talk about that. It does make me laugh, other teams' obsession with Declan Rice. But what I would say is, to sort of add to what Mark was saying, is that we ourselves are guilty of what we're complaining about with Rice. So, for example, there's so many footballers we don't watch in, week out, that play similar position to Declan Rice. Calvin Phillips. I've got a very good friend that's a Leeds fan. She thinks the world of Calvin Phillips. She acknowledges that Rice is better, which is why we keep her around. But Calvin Phillips is a very technical footballer, yes, but he's not the athlete that Declan Rice is. Declan Rice is a bit of a Rolls Royce that can charge out of holding mid and because sometimes he makes those jinking runs. The thing is, as we can all admit, when he makes those runs, like the late one against Leicester, there's not much of technical ability about it. It's just sheer will and determination and his athleticism taking him through. Like, for example, another friend of mine who's a Chelsea fan was like, I don't understand why he was Declan Rice. Why do we need another centre-back? And I'm like, he's not a centre-back. Well, yeah, that's why he doesn't play well for England, because he's a centre-back that plays holding mid. No, he's not a centre-back. He played centre-back for for about 20-odd games in 17-18. He's a holding mid. So that's why they're criticising stuff that they don't, like you said, they don't know what type of player he is. Some fans think he's a centre-back. he can play centre back, but he's much better as a defensive midfielder. Another mate of mine who's a United fan, we were having this conversation during lockdown, and he said that Scott McTominay is a better footballer than Declan Rice. Now, on this is a virtual chat. Me and other football fans started laughing, but me and this other fan don't watch Scott McTominay week in, week out. I see him. I don't really watch Man United games unless we're playing them, so I don't know. So maybe Scott McTominay is a better footballer than Rice. I doubt it, being personally, but so then when fans from other teams, if we go Declan Rice is better than Calvin Phillips, they've never seen Declan Rice play week in, week out. They're going to laugh because they've seen Calvin Phillips play week out and week out. Like, oh, how can he be better than Calvin Phillips? He's mustard for us. But then when you start watching Declan Rice week in, week out, people start understanding. My friend, her name's Fiona, she hadn't watched West Ham play week in, week out till lockdown. She started watching them and was like, yeah, you know what? Declan Rice is a Rolls Royce. You're right. So it's just fan mentality of your player. Our player is better than your player, and we don't watch your player, but we know he's better. And that's the sort of mentality we've got. I mean, like, again, and Twitter is just it can be a bloody cesspit for football, you know, things. There's people that just want tweets to, and I quote, bang. So they put out, like, you know, controversial opinions about a footballer that they know is nonsense, just to get loads of angry reacts and stuff like that, and be ha 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 fishing rod, you know. So that's a lot of the Rice stuff is a bit of that, like Spurs fans going, oh, fishing for West Ham fans, but they don't care about us. I do think in England as a whole, I think Rice may not have played his best in those games, but very few players were playing their best. I think only really Grealish and Dominic Calvert-Lewin came out, from what I've read, with positive reviews in either of those games. And Grealish had positive reviews, and he didn't even come on against Denmark. So I think on the England problem as a whole, I do think this system is too defensive. Southgate is a very good man manager and always has, but has always struggled tactically. That's what happened at Middlesbrough. The players loved him. He was a very good man manager, but tactically inept. He was very, very green as a manager then. Now he's matured and got a bit of nuance about him, but equally the tactical ineptitude is possibly coming out now. I hope it works out because I love Southgate, but this formation doesn't suit Declan Rice because he's used to playing, again, week in, week out, a different system. It doesn't fit other players, like you said about Trent. It fits Reece James fantastically, but if you ask who's the better footballer, Reece James or Trent, again, that comes down to who watches. Chelsea fans will say Reece James, Liverpool fans will say Trent. Most fans will probably say Trent, to be fair. But then that's where this whole problem comes from. The criticism of Declan Rice is unfair from our point of view because we watch him week in, week out, and we know how good he is. But to put yourself in other fans' shoes, they don't know that. So they're just going to judge him on match of day highlights, where we're getting turned out by teams last season quite a bit. You got fans that think he's a centre-back, and they go, oh, he's a centre-back, and you're conceding loads of goals. You can't be that good. And you got other people that are rating their own players above him because that's who they see week in, week out. They don't see Declan Rice week in, week out. Interestingly as well, it's also, again, how little people pay attention to Declan Rice. The same person that said McTominay was better said, you know, it's, again, just shows that they hadn't watched him play, said that when, under the first season of Pellegrini, 18-19, Declan Rice was playing twice as good as he was last season, but the reality was the other way round. He was having to do twice as much this season, hammer of the year, and was doing much more passes and interceptions this year. He just hadn't scored a couple of goals, whereas he had done that the other season. So it's just interesting that people comment on Declan Rice and seem to know that right off Declan Rice that don't really know the first thing about him. That's nothing against this guy that I'm talking about. It's just an example I've got of these two guys that one thinks he's a centre back and the other doesn't rate him and hasn't been watching him week in, week out. And that's where it comes from. So we sort of got to take the criticism with a pinch of salt. Is that equally, are we that guilty? We could be guilty of it ourselves, writing off other players. So sorry to go on a bit of a tangent there, but that's my opinion on it.
That's what the show's here for. But you're right. You're right. You know, with someone like Declan Rice, it is interesting. You see all these names that have popped up over the years: Harry Winks, you know, Sean Longstaff, all these players. Declan Rice has outlasted them all. He's still in that England team. You know, I remember when he couldn't get an England team over Eric Dyer, and I was thinking, there's no way that's possible. Now Eric Dyer is struggling at centre back. So I think the only thing that I can possibly think of, and Dennis, you've touched on it a little bit, where other fans look at him and don't rate him, is sometimes when he's outmanned in that midfield, when it's a 2-man midfield against maybe a 4-man midfield, it's difficult for Declan to cover all the ground and cover all of the spaces. And sometimes for West Ham, he's exploited because he doesn't have that support. It's easy then to look at him and say, well, he's not doing what you say he does. I'm like, yeah, but if he was playing in a top 6 team where they had the majority of the possession, you know, where it was very like structured and organised, he would be a Rolls Royce. Week in, week out, you'd see it. There wouldn't be any highlights of him struggling. And I can see why Chelsea did look at him, because you look at Chelsea defensively. I don't really rate Lampard too highly as a manager, but he would plug a lot of gaps in that team quite easily. So, yeah, you know, I've just got to say, I just think it's unfair. Hopefully, we don't have to keep defending him. Eventually, everyone will kind of get off that bandwagon. And
everyone will see the light.
Yeah, you know, it takes time. It does take time. I mean, that's why I always try and, like, you know, I don't have judgment on a player before I've seen them play. It's always difficult, even with the Calvin thing. I was like, there's no way Calvin's good. I'm like, watching players like,
he just needs to score the goal, the winning goal in the final of Euros next year, and then
it has to be a bicycle kick. It has to be a bicycle kick as well.
Bullet header or like a Watford goal type thing.
One of them.
Nice one. Right. Someone put in the comments, Rice just reads the game better. And I think that's one of his biggest attributes. His ability to read the game is exceptional, which is why I say he's so yeah, I think Calvin's good physically. Don't get me wrong. I puts in a decent tackle. You know, he's strong, but I just think Declan, because his perception of the game and he knows where the ball is and where the space is, he makes so many more interceptions. Final question, lads, and I'm buzzing for this game. I'm not quite sure why, in case it goes Pete on, but can West Ham for the first Premier League win against Tottenham? And I really don't like Tottenham. I've really tried this week to do previews and try to be as neutral as humanly possible. It's very, very difficult. I'm gonna go Mark on this one, and we're gonna have to just figure out a route from there. But do you think West Ham can pull off a victory? And I think this game is a lot more competitive for both sides than it was a few weeks ago.
There's no reason why we can't at all. I think, you know, we're obviously in good form the last 2 games. The system that we're playing now suits us. I think Tottenham, while obviously they've had some good results, there is still question marks over them, right, for me, because I think how Mourinho was just saying about defensive formations and tactics. Obviously, there is always that there with Mourinho. And I think if West Ham can get in amongst them a little bit, and be basically like how they've been the last couple of games, in terms of being tough to beat, and fighting for every ball, and it's not just getting the first ball, getting that second ball as well is just as important. Then I don't see any reason why we can't. Obviously, we need, you know, we can stop that supply from getting to Kane, which is what we've done very well the last couple of times. Then there's no reason why not, because I think after Antonio's goal there in their, you know, when they lost their first game at White Hart in the new stadium, I think that there's definitely a fear factor there for Tottenham, and obviously he's now starting another 10, 15 yards up the pitch from that game. And when I fancy Antonio every time up against Eric Dyer in terms, you know, if we can get, you know, Antonio to run onto the ball, no one's going to catch him in that Tottenham back 3, back 4. And I think that we've got there's enough confidence in the squad. I do fancy. I feel more confident than maybe what I have done in recent games against them, definitely.
Yeah, you've touched on it, mate. There is a weakness of those 2 centre backs. They're not the quickest. They can get pulled apart. I think Dyer might be out for the game, unfortunately. So I think it'll be Sanchez and Alba. You're right, though. You're right. I think Antonio can turn them, and I think that mobility of our front 3, particularly, you know, Fornals freeing for a pass to Jarrod Boyd, it's going to cause some nightmares. And I think they've done some good business. Tottenham, obviously, we will touch on Gareth Bale, but I think Reguilon and Doherty are decent fullbacks as well. But they love to push on, and it's not really a Mourinho style for his fullbacks to push on, but just because they've got that natural tendency to do so, and I've watched a bit of them, they do like to do it. There is going to be space, and you could see a 3-on-2 if West Ham break. So I am secretly hopeful Antonio can do the business as he's done before.
I must not that I particularly care who Tottenham sign or whatever, but I was very surprised actually when they signed Doherty. You know, predominantly a wing back. It's not really Mourinho's game, is it? To be playing wing backs, he likes to have a four at the back. So I was surprised at that. But as you say, that actually does then work to our advantage because he does leave space in behind. Which hopefully Arthur will be able to exploit, because I think that's worked quite well with Creswell being the left-sided centre back, because I think it just gives Arthur a little bit more encouragement to try and get forward. And what's quite refreshing is that it actually means that we're giving the other team something to think about, rather than us being worried about there's Kane or there's Son or there's obviously Bale and the others. Lamella and whatever. So I think that's quite encouraging from our point of view that we've got that in our locker to give the opposition something else to think about. And obviously, I haven't mentioned Bowen as well on the other side. I just hope that we don't start Noble and go defend, a little bit extra defensive. Noble understands what it means to the fans and all that. We've got to, for me, assuming of course everyone's fit, start the team that started the last league game, and just say to them, go out and do exactly the same thing again. And there's nothing for me to fear from Tottenham.
Yeah, we're in such a better position with this system and this side than we were a few weeks ago. I think we do present some problems for Spurs. It might be one of them games because Mourinho isn't really the sort of, he doesn't really look at the offensive too much. Even when I watch them, even when they beat United, they only really pushed up a bit because they had, 10 men. So I think it'll be quite a tentative game, if I'm honest. My biggest concerns naturally are Heung-min Son, Harry Kane, and maybe Gareth Bale. So, Dennis, do you think we can keep them quiet, if at all? Because at some point, they're going to find space, behind that, back three or wherever.
Really depends on which Spurs turn up, really. Same thing with which West Ham team turns up. I mean, we're sod's law. This will be the game that we get caught out or get undone, and then everyone's like, we've got to change the tactics. I mean, like I said last week, the position hasn't changed from there. Good runs come to an end, and I see Spurs' firepower, and I'm just not that confident. Like Wolves and Leicester, yes, were free scoring, but Leicester were getting penalties against Man City in that high-scoring game. You take the penalties away, they scored twice. Wolves, a good team, but weren't that high-scoring. They only scored a few goals. They scored a couple of goals, but didn't smash it. Spurs have scored 7 and 6 in their last 2 games, or two of their last games, should I say. So that concerns me. That's where I feel that we're not going to keep them at bay. The main thing I think to look into is the spirit of both camps coming into this. So Spurs will be in high spirits and got their prodigal son Gareth Bale back in training. That's probably given them a boost because obviously, it's good to have one of your old mates back and stuff. Whereas at West Ham, we keep hearing the spirit is high at the club, and yes, off the back of those 2 games, I can imagine it would be. But I refuse to believe that all the stuff that's gone on this week with the transfer window, with Monday's deadline, where we got rid of 4 players and didn't replace any. I would have thought some of the players would be very concerned and maybe even disheartened at that. I know Tartan Tony Pulis always says the spirits are high no matter what. He says it when we lose, 2 or 3-0. He still says, the spirit's really good. We believe we can come out of it, because he's not going to admit that, we're all miserable and gutted. But I think that's going to play a factor. I think that all the off-field stuff that's happened the last couple of weeks since we last played could that play into this game. I mean, we shook it off against Wolves and Leicester, but Wolves didn't turn up, and we were on a high from the Wolves game at Leicester. Has reality set in a little bit possibly for the lads? That's something I would look into. But yeah, it hasn't written on it. The Bale to come off the bench with 20 minutes to go against tired legs and score a screamer. We spoke about it last time. I still have flashbacks to the Tottenham 2013 game where Bale just turned the game on its head. So the short answer after that long rambling rant is no. I don't think we can shut them up. I don't think a 3rd clean sheet in a row is on the cards, but we could still get a result. stranger things have happened. I remember we went to White Hart Lane in 2013 off the back of, well, what we're going to do. And we turned them over 3-0 under Allardyce. So lots of unexpected stuff has happened at White Hart Lane over the years. So who knows?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we're not playing them at White Hart Lane, are we? Are we playing them at home?
White Hart Lane.
No.
No, we are right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a White Hart Lane. I had a moment of doubt when I was like, wait, are we at home? Are we at home?
Playing the toilet bowl, Antonio.
Antonio's toilet we're playing at. Yeah, I do love that.
Antonio loves it there. But I mean, it's going to be tough. Like, there's no doubt about it. It's going to be tough. Son and Kane are in ridiculous form. Harry Kane, actually, as a player, has impressed me a lot more than I expect, because you see him as a goal scorer. There's no doubt in his finishing, but some of the assists he's putting in this season, like, and dropping into that 10 role and finding the men, like, bombing on. He's an intelligent he's a better football player than I probably gave him credit for. So my biggest concern is obviously their midfield. They'll play with a 3-man midfield. Kane will probably come into a 10 at points. You've then only really got Rice and Souček there. So at times I can see West Ham having to be quite defensive, and maybe Fornals dropping in just to kind of have like a 4-man midfield or something like that. Because Tottenham, albeit they don't get forward too much, if they start dominating the ball in the final third, and something will happen. And I hate it when I see West Ham, when sometimes we sit so defensively and we know something's going to happen. And I think we did it really well against Leicester, where rather than just sitting back and, all right, at times we took the pressure on, we saw the team push up a little bit more and push into their half. And that pressure sort of paid off in the end. But Charles, can we do it? Can we beat Tottenham Hotspur? I'd love to see it.
Ye of little faith, Dennis. Ye of little faith. Come on. No. On a side note, to be fair, anyone who's interested in any Fantasy Premier League hints, I've actually dropped Son and Kane to the bench this weekend. So if that proves to you how much confidence I have in this team, then I forgot to change my team. I completely forgot. Deadline's gone. But I mean, it's a risk I'm willing to take. It's a risk I'm willing to take, dropping Son and Kane to the bench. It was a bit disheartening, but there you go. I think the key to this game is going to be defence, and who stands stronger or stands strongest amongst both of them. And from what I've seen, I mean, obviously it's a very recent sample size, but the games against Wolves and Leicester, we were impeccable defensively, and this new system has really kind of given us new life in that defence that didn't seem possible after that first Newcastle game. Tottenham, they're interesting, aren't they? Like you say, Dennis, it depends what team turns up, whether it's going to be the elite team that smashes Tottenham 20 goals to 1, or it's going to be a team that completely underperforms with the players that they have. One thing I will say is that with that Man U game, if you're comparing the forms of the two if you're comparing the form of Man U's defence with our defence, I'd say ours is way better than theirs on recent form. Their defence was an absolute shambles against Tottenham, so I'm hoping that we don't concede 8 or 9 goals like they did. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. But there is no reason, like Mark said, that we can't win this game. I think in terms of everything, all the evidence that we've had recently, it should suggest that we definitely have a chance to win. Obviously, if Bell comes on, then like Dennis says, expect a 30-yard screamer to break West Ham hearts. But yeah, I mean, he's not going to be starting, so hopefully we can sort of be in a decent enough amount of control in the game where he won't have to have too much of an impact. But again, you bring on a player of Bale's caliber in the dying minutes of the game, and something's bound to happen. So we'll just have to wait and see. All I will say is that it's going to be a really, really good game. Might even be probably the best game of the weekend. Having a look at the fixtures, just in terms of the form of both teams and just how close it could actually be. So I'm just happy that I'm in a position where I get to say that we're going to be competitive and we're not going to be. Hopefully we won't be rolling over and letting this pummel us again. So we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, Corey, I want that win more than just as much as you do. So hopefully we'll be able to get Antonio to score another screamer and do another crazy dance again.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, go on, mate.
So we all Spurs games are what we live for. I mean, growing up, it's true. Like that, I don't take no shame in when people say, "Oh, it's your cup final." It is my cup final. It is. I will freely admit to people that, because I grew up. I grew up without us playing Millwall or Orient or any of other local rivals. For me, Tottenham. You can't hate Charlton. Charlton's like that cuddly teddy bear. You can't hate Charlton. So it's got to be Spurs for your biggest rival growing up. And it's the only game where when we do lose, I do come out of it feeling, again, pardon my language, feeling pissed off when we lose, no matter what the performance is like. Even if we are putting in a gutsy performance like that 2013 game I put on about where we came so close to beating them, you come away seething no matter how good they play. But all I can ask is that the team put in a whole, like echo Charles's comments, team put in a great performance, team put in a lot of fight and don't roll over. That's all we can really ask for, and that's all I ever expect from West Ham, really. I don't expect us to win every game. I just really, 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 really bloody hope we do win tomorrow.
I think in general, like, obviously, that performance against Newcastle was awful. I remember doing extra time on that, and I was so despondent to the point where I was like, I don't know how this season's going to go. Obviously, you put in a great performance against Arsenal, and disappointing result. There were some defensive lapses. Obviously, that Leicester and those Wolves performances were unbelievable, particularly the Leicester game. Now I'm looking at it thinking, this is an opportunity for us to get a point against a team in a run of fixtures that we kind of didn't expect to get anything from. And you've got the next two games, which are Manchester City and Liverpool. I mean, they're sort of free hits really in my head. So I'd love to see us go out there, and if we could get a 3 point and, just say the next two games, they are what they are. If we get anything from them, then fine. Because in actual fact, we've kind of done really well out of this run of fixtures. It was almost that death run to try and get to November without being rock bottom of the league. And West Ham have pulled off some good results. So fingers crossed. I'd love to do them over. Really
having Masuaku start is a big plus as well. Masuaku not being injury free is a huge plus. I mean, we need one thing I meant to say at the very beginning was, can we just appreciate how great he's been on Twitter this last couple of weeks? He's been on fire. Like he's been updating us on the Benrahma transfer with cryptic tweets.
That's so funny, wasn't it? Because didn't he tweet something and then he had to delete it? He
tweeted a photoshopped photo of Benrahma on the West Ham kit saying it just looks right. That was on Sunday.
The club told him that does make you question why it took us so long to get the deal over the line then, doesn't it?
Salthouse is going to Salthouse. That's what I'm going to say.
Who needs a scouting department when you've got Masuaku and Souček? It's perfect.
I know. and
it's so fun, isn't it? Like, no, so I was just saying about the Salthouse thing, because it's like it always. I think now as fans we've kind of understood that there's something going on at the club that's not quite right. And every sign you just go, oh yeah, that's a. Salthouse has managed to get, was it Soufal as well, that I don't know if he did the deal or who is it? Oh, Craig Dawson. Craig Dawson and Benrahma are both his clients.
And he was involved in the sale of Diangana for no apparent reason, according to X. I've got no evidence of it, but X said it on his podcast that he was involved in, and he didn't really know why. He's like, I can't offer an explanation. Just Salthouse was involved in the sale.
We need to get him out of the club. I think someone they brokered the deal, don't they, with the club. I think that's how Salthouse got involved in that. The club used him as their negotiator. So effectively, he's our director of football, I guess.
Salthouse, pretty much.
Well, look,
crazy.
Let's wrap it up, lads. Thank you everyone for joining us. Make sure you drop a like, because apparently it helps, and subscribe to the West Ham Way YouTube channel. Thanks to the guests once again. Always a pleasure, lads. You'll be back on probably quite soon, so we'll see you then.
See you later.
So you said enjoy the game on Sunday.
Take care.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah.
Right.
See you later. Come on, you.